Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for coming today. I'm going to have to work with both of them. So this one is on. So let me turn this one on because I can't really turn around each time. So what was my password? Anybody knows my password? Okay, we are on the same page. Okay, so if what I say doesn't make sense, please tell me. It means I forgot to push this one after pushing this one. It's a pleasure being here today. So let's talk about this book, A Forum for Peace. And to make sure I don't forget to say certain things today, I made a special slide. See, I forgot already. Here we go. All right. So first, the fact that I'm here, I really I have so much gratitude for so many different people. And it starts with a conversation in the back of a bus in Japan on November 9th. I was with my good friend, Tariq Hassan, and he said, I heard you're going to New York for a speech in February. Would you like to stop by Washington, D.C. too? And I said, yes. So that's one of the reasons I'm here. And of course, thanks to Bill and Joe and Paula and so many people that I have to thank individually. And then all of you for deciding on a Sunday afternoon to come here. Thank you so much. Maybe for most of you, this is the first time you will see this presentation, but there's somebody who is going to see it for the fourth time. Paula was with me at the New York Culture Center. She was with me at the UN headquarters. She was with me at City University, New York. So after the third time, she told me, why don't you tell stories during your speeches, you know? And actually, she's right. I'm used to giving kind of cold academic speeches, and then I realized, oh gee, the fourth one is coming, I don't have any stories to tell. So I made a big effort, and I'm going to tell you 3 stories and just give you all the stories in a row, because a good storyteller is I'm supposed to put the stories at strategic positions in my speech. I'm not at that level yet. I have stories, it's already something. So here are the 3 stories. So that it's done. Okay. The first event on Tuesday was with Ambassador Chowdhury and Betty Reardon. And Betty Reardon is the founder of Peace Education. If you Google her, that's what you will find. And she shared at some point that the origin of her passion for peace and for peace education is simply 2 documents. That when she read the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the UN Charter, her life was transformed on the spot by reading those documents, and she decided, I'm going to devote my life to this. And she did, and she created the field of peace education. So first conclusion of the first story is the importance of writing and education. Or it can be storytelling and education, but definitely documents and awakening through the work of others is really crucial. Second story, Ambassador Chowdhury explained that a long time ago, Bangladesh was under occupation by Pakistan, and it's complicated, but the Pakistani army was burning down villages after villages. So they would come to a village and tell Bangladeshi people, please get out and go over there to that mountain because we're going to burn down your village. And one day, it was the turn of his village, and a young soldier came and knocked on the door, and his mother, Ambassador Chowdhury's mother, opened the door, and the young man said, please go over there, I'm going to burn your house. He said, excuse me? And she looked him straight in the eyes. Could you repeat what you just said? You have to go over there because I'm going to burn your house. So she looked at him and she said, if you want to burn my house, you have to do it in front of me. When the whole military operation was over, there was one house standing in the village. And the conclusion is the power of nonviolence. That of course it doesn't work all the time, obviously, but this is amazing that in this situation she had the power of a woman, of a mother, of a human being to touch somebody else, to really change the course of the situation. And the last story is about Betty Williams. So the event on Thursday, the book launch on Thursday, was at the UN headquarters. So you have to go through security check and show your little pass and everything, and then you have to be on time and sit in the room, and then you have Ambassador Chowdhury, Betsy Williams, and then you have a representative of Ban Ki-moon, you have a representative of the President of the General Assembly, and then you have the President of the Alliance of Civilizations, and then you have you. And the 8 minutes version of this 45 minutes PowerPoint. So really, really scary. And everybody was tense because you don't want to say, you want to say exactly the right thing at the right time, and you know, everything you say is recorded and everything. So now it's Betty Williams' turn to talk. Ladies and gentlemen, before I say anything, I'd like you to do a little exercise. And don't do it, I'm just going to tell you what it is. You don't have to do it. Everybody please stand up. Boy, it's Betty Williams, 1976 Nobel Peace Prize. You better do what she says. So the all UN people and then me, we all stand up. And now please hug the person to your left, to your right, and behind you. So everybody hugged everybody. So I got a hug from the President of the Alliance of Civilizations, and a hug from the representative of the President of the General Assembly. Well, it was a hug, period, right? And the whole atmosphere changed, and it became, and it was, she was really reinforcing the message of Ikeda. It's kind of rude for some people. I'm gonna use the last name because in social science, you say Habermas, you say Hugo, you say Socrates, you say the last name only. So she's really reinforcing the message of Ikeda that we have to put human warmth first in the center of everything we do, the dignity of life. And it really worked. It really changed the atmosphere. I'm done. I've told my stories. Thank you.
And now for a dry, scholarly speech. Are you ready?
All right. So the peace proposals, as you know, are written since 1983 by Daisaku Ikeda, and they are called annual peace proposals every year, like clockwork. And you know, there's more than 30 of them now since 1983. So how did this book come about? Well, the first thing that we had to do, you know, myself as editor, and then all the people that support it for 2 years, we had to read all the peace proposals very carefully and select everything that has to do with the UN directly, because the peace proposals are not for the UN, they are for the world. And then they happen to also land in the UN, which is a wonderful thing, and then they are read and analyzed and everything. So we had to, because the book is about the UN, so we had to select all the passages, and it took many, many months of research, because it's not just about Googling, I mean, like you know, having the software, UN, everything. Because sometimes two people meet somewhere and create an agreement that was possible because of something that happens at the UN 5 years ago. You have to take that into account too. So it was really, really hard work. So when we finished that, we had about that number of pages, but just in chronological order from 83 until today. Extremely boring stuff to read, sorry. Because it's like, so what we had to do is to figure out the best way to present them into different chapters. And that took us several months to do that. So I'll show you what the chapters are. So why has this book appeared now? Well, first, there is the author, Ikeda's belief in the United Nations as a forum for peace. He's convinced that it is a forum for peace, and it should be an even better forum for peace. And some reasons for that in his biography are the three elements in red here. That's what I added this morning at 4 o'clock in the morning. Wow. Thank you. How many slides did you miss? Okay. That's why I was talking about Mr. Ikeda and all the peace proposals. That fit anyway, right? And now, okay. 3 main elements, which you can find in this book from page 11 to 16, described thoroughly. His war experiences, his mentor, José Tuta, and some Buddhist principles and ideals. And also just an anecdote that in 1960, when he was 32, Ikeda visited the United States. He went to New York, to the UN headquarters, and he saw so many countries becoming independent, and the representatives of those countries, especially from Africa, declaring the independence of their country. So he thought, wow, this is a really wonderful place to change the world. I really want to support this place. 30 years of peace proposal is something to celebrate. So basically this is a celebratory book. It's a book to celebrate. Now somebody said the following, and it really made a big impact for the decision to move in the direction of making this book. I don't remember who said that, but I will now read the quote, and bear with me for the beginning. I'll tell you the beginning too, even though it's cut there. And he's talking about Ikeda and his work. He says, "I know of no one who has highlighted the role and responsibility of the world body so consistently, relentlessly, and substantively for such a long period of time." And usually when he says that, he adds that no Secretary General has done that, because they do their work very hard, but once they have to retire, you don't really hear about them anymore. So 30 years and more is absolutely unique in the world. Oh, I think I remember who said that. It's the one on the left. Whoop, here. Him. So Ambassador Chaudhary 2 years ago really insisted, and there was lots of discussions. Anyway, we came up with the book. Well, he's a pretty important man in the world, not because of his position, but because he has so many ideas. 2 ideas that he proposed that are being implemented seriously now. One is the idea of a culture of peace, which he calls the culture of peace. So this idea that you see there, culture of peace, he's one of the people who really made sure it became officially part of the UN programs. And another important idea that he had led to Resolution 1325, which means that within all the work of the UN, we must make sure each time that men and women have equal voice and equal power. And he's been fighting really hard for that, and he's still continuing for. So that's Ambassador Chaudhary. So let's go into the 3 elements that I mentioned, war experiences, Josei Toda, and some Buddhist ideals. So the little kid over there on the top left, that's Ikeda during the war. And okay, so seen from a Japanese child, this is what the war looks like. Quote, "Our family saw my 4 elder brothers, all in the prime of life, called away to war. All 4 were made tools of Japan's invasion of China." So one day one of his brothers, his name was Kiichi, his elder brother, came back from serving to take a break at home, and he didn't say much. And then all of a sudden, one day he said, "What the Japanese army is doing in China is absolutely horrible. What arrogance!" And no comments. So Ikeda knew there was something really wrong with this idea of liberating Asia from the bad Western powers, which is what most Japanese citizens thought that's what they were doing, because the propaganda was about that. He realized there was something wrong. So Pearl Harbor 41, Ikeda was 13. So he was really, the whole Japanese nation was like in this mode of, we are going to conquer all of Asia. And they really believed they were unstoppable. In 31, they took Manchuria. In 37, they started to attack China. In 41, they won the Battle of Pearl Harbor. And then they won in Guam, Wake Islands. 42, the Philippines. They even attacked Australia. And then all of a sudden, Battle of Midway, 42, that's it. From there, it's downwards. So then they started to, what's going on? We were promised that if we serve, we sacrifice ourselves, we're going to win. From Midway, it goes down. So then the defeat of Japan, what you see up there is not an atomic bomb, that's firebombing. Atomic bomb is something else, Hiroshima, Nagasaki. So then, after believing all this, you get really confused about the meaning of life. Moreover, they had no news about Kichi. He had gone back to the front. The war is over, no news from Kichi. They had to wait 2 years after the war to receive the news. Quote, eventually the sad news came, my elder brother was dead, killed in action in Burma. And he had been killed on January 11, 1945. They had to wait 2.5 years to find out. So now you have a very distressed Japanese, 17-year-old Japanese at the end of the war, 19-year-old on May 30th. And then he goes to a meeting and he meets a man who was able to understand the situation and stand up and go to jail to tell the Japanese government, I really don't agree with what you're doing. And he went to jail for his beliefs. And now he's in front of that man who is shining. He's poor, he's very skinny, he looks a little bit sick, but he's really shining with human dignity. So this confused young man thought, I can follow this person, and started to talk to him, and the dialogue is still going on today in a way. So that's the second element, is the mentorship of José Toda. A quote that illustrates a little bit of everything. So August 14, 1947 is when they met for the first time. Quote, the burning commitment to peace that remained unshaken throughout his imprisonment was something he carried with him his entire life. It was from this and from the profound compassion that characterized each of his interactions that I most learned. 98% of what I am today, I learned from him. Well, it might be a little bit scary for Europeans, Americans, and others, but in Japan it's a natural thing. If you want to learn judo, karate, a tea ceremony, kimono wearing, you need a mentor. Otherwise, it's not going to work. That's the way they do it in Japan, and of course, this is 100% a Japanese context. So even to know what to do about politics and the world, you need a mentor in Japan. So Ikeda met Toda. And among the many declarations that Toda made, there was a declaration calling for the abolition of nuclear weapons that he made in 1957, and it's a theme that is recurrent throughout the peace proposals and in this book too, and even today. There is a lot of desire from Ikeda to abolish nuclear weapons. And until 2012, I've never read anything from Ikeda directly where he says, not only do we have to abolish nuclear weapons, but we also have to try to move away from nuclear energy. However, after Fukushima in 2012, for the first time in the 2012 peace proposal, he mentioned it very clearly. Okay. That's another 4 o'clock in the morning modification for today. In the 2012 peace proposal, page 501 of this book, quote, I therefore urge a rapid transition to an energy policy that is not reliant on nuclear power. Okay, third and last pillar of his thinking, according to me and also according to what he says from page 11 to 16 in this book, principles and values from Buddhism. There's lots of them. I'm only going to go over two of them. The first one, the respect for the dignity of life, is not an exclusivity of Buddhism or of religion. I mean, I think any human being who loves his mom and dad and himself and herself believes in the dignity of life. So the problem now is how do we put that at the center of our global lives? And another very important theme in Buddhism is gender equality. And there is a legend in the Lotus Sutra. It's Sutra means book if you want. So in the Lotus book, Lotus Sutra, a story of a woman, she's a woman, and a young woman. And at that time in India, if you want to become enlightened as a woman, first you have to die, then you have to be reborn as a man, and then you might have a chance. And in the Lotus Sutra, this lady, you should tell me, come on. Here she is. This lady is in front of the Buddha, and there is a big assembly like this, and then she tells everybody, okay, you think it's going to take me a long time to become a Buddha, right? At least I have to die, become a man, practice a few lifetimes, okay? Look at this. I'm going to give a jewel to the Buddha, and I'm going to become a Buddha even before he catches it. Everybody ready? Catch! Up, and she became a Buddha. So it's a declaration that there is absolutely no reason why women should be. The enlightenment of human beings is the enlightenment of human beings, period. So when you put 1 and 2 and 3 together, then you can really understand even deeper maybe a major declaration from Ikeda in his novel, The Human Revolution, quote, "A great inner revolution in just a single individual will help achieve a change in the destiny of a nation and further will cause a change in the destiny of humankind based on his war experiences, his mentorship from Toda, and a few Buddhist principles." Good. So that's a summary of my first book, that there is a way to always be able to move from individual peace at the very top to world peace at the very bottom. It doesn't work all the time. That's not the only way, but it's a way and it works. And if you do it in the right situation, it can help a lot. You start with inner transformation. So whatever happens outside, you make a change inside. You have more courage or more wisdom or more realism. You can make a change inside so that what looks totally impossible for you, you have a change in perspective. It's very important. And then once you make that change, you can talk to your friends about it, get all excited. Oh, you know what? I thought about nuclear weapons again or about climate change again. And what if da 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 da? And everybody gets really excited. Then we have more and more people having dialogue. And finally, we can organize ourselves. We can lobby. We can do all kinds of stuff as a group. And as global citizens, we can make a change. So it's a very systematic progression, if you want, from one to the other. And you can find that in all the peace proposals, if you look carefully. And now for a very, very dry speech about the book. All right. Everybody take a deep breath, especially me. All right. So one element that comes back in the peace proposals, especially for the UN, especially in this book, is the preamble to the Charter of the United Nations, especially the first 3 words, we the peoples. So it's not we the governments. It's not we the representatives with great titles. It's we the peoples. So Ikeda repeats often in the peace proposals that sometimes at the UN it's so complex what they have to do, they get a little bit lost. All they need to do is go back to the first 3 words. Oh, it's about people's lives. It's about protecting the people. And then you can restart the engine. Okay. So the result of many months of work, how do we introduce all those peace proposals in the most meaningful way? We finally agreed on 4 chapters. Chapter 1, a United Nations living to its mission. What is the mission of the United Nations? How much has it been doing in that way? How much more could they do if we support them better, etc. Number 2, a United Nations to eliminate misery from the earth, many types of misery. Number 3, a United Nations for a world without war. Of course, war is a type of misery, but it's such a big one, it deserves its own chapter. Number 4, empowerment for future change. So the mission of the UN, of course, one of the major aspects is to help the world to move toward a culture of peace. And that's the title of the 99 Peace Proposal already at that time. Toward a culture of peace, a cosmic view. Okay, why is the little A there in red? Well, because yesterday morning I got contact from Ambassador Chowdhury, who told me that officially now the UN talks about the culture of peace, and that in my next presentation I should be careful and say the culture of peace. So I thought it's better to put it in red and then give you the option. Maybe a good way to think about it is that we have one planet, we are one humanity. So whatever culture of peace we will build globally together will be it. It will be the culture of peace. So why not use the? And I selected many quotes as I was preparing in December and January for this presentation, and I And then something happened. I realized there were 3 quotes that were indicating something really interesting. I realized that those 3 quotes represent a continuous intellectual and spiritual history of more than 100 years in a very coherent package, if you want. First quote, and it's in the context of the mission of the UN, of course. So the mission of the United Nations is to channel competitive energies into humanitarian objectives in the context of humanitarian competition. That's on page 19 of the book, if you want to check. So what does that mean? We can talk about humanitarian competition 1.5 hours, so I hope you can invite somebody else next time for just this. It's basically, it means that military, economic, political competition can go very wrong if it's not based on human dignity. Military competition becomes war, economic becomes exploitation, and political becomes oppression. But if you just add the humanitarian element, military humanitarian competition becomes, you send the army to help people after a tsunami. So there's nothing wrong with the army, but maybe there's something wrong about not having respect for the dignity of life, which is happening everywhere. Same thing with economics. Economics is not good or bad, but if we can put the dignity of life first and have really humanitarian economics, and it's happening already, it's going to get better and better. Same thing with politics. So it's really adding, if you want, adding the human touch, but if you do that, it can save millions of lives. Another concept by Toda is global citizenship, and by Ikeda, of course, is dialogue, and those three appear in this book a lot. And as I explained, in Japan, you need a mentor if you want to learn anything. So Makiguchi was the mentor of Toda, and Toda was the mentor of Ikeda. So there is a link between those 3. So the first idea came already in 1903, when Japan was trying to become an imperial colonizing power. And so you have more than 100 years of intellectual and spiritual consistency here, and I think it's pretty rare in the world. Actually, I was told that by a Gandhian scholar in India who said, I'm so jealous of you guys. We have Gandhi and maybe a little bit of Nehru, but you guys have 3 generations. Wow. So a major idea that come back again and again is to emphasize the human face rather than the national face. Of course, the first 3 words, we, the peoples. An example of, there's hundreds of proposals in the book, so we're just going to focus on the top one when it comes to the voices of civil society. So let's look at the funding. UNICEF has a great system of funding. If you want to support UNICEF, you can do that. Just go and put money in a bank account and you can support UNICEF. If you want to support the United Nations, you can't do that. Only governments and recently private companies can support the UN. Of course, it causes problems when they don't want to pay or if they choose what to pay for. So a radical solution from President Ikeda is to allow every individual to support the UN directly, and he calls it a People's Fund for the UN. And there's many, many other very interesting proposals along those lines. About the future, women and young people, global visioning means we get together and we imagine what the world is going to look like in 50 or 100 years if we continue like this. And then we try to make a change here and now for the future. And Ikeda really insists that this type of global visioning or any planning for the future of the world would make no sense without women's perspectives and also without the voices of young people. I chose this slide, this quotation, because it has both at the same time. But actually, there's many, many passages which is only about women. Yeah, that's the one, but it's cut, sorry.
I just wanted to point out that your fine slides are chopped off on the left, so
yeah.
I don't know if there's anything to be done. I'm not sure if you're aware of it.
How much does that disturb everybody?
We can follow from what you're saying.
Right. I don't think we can fix it right now. Actually, the projector broke down, and this is plan B. So it's better than nothing, I think. Okay. But yes, I noticed, and I thought, just have to deal with it. It's like the UN, you know. It's not perfect, but just have to go with it. Prince, I mean, his name is Prince. It's not a joke. Prince, you are truly a prince. And thank you. See, this is where critical thinking and constructive criticism comes in. He finally said it, and it was fixed. Well done. Thank you. So lots of ideas about women and, of course, gender equality, the absolute equality of women based on that story in the Lotus Sutra and other ideas, and also that the voices of young people are absolutely indispensable. And we already finished the whole chapter, chapter 2. The title is A UN to Eliminate Misery from the Earth, and that comes directly from a quote from Toda, who said, quote, I wish to see the word misery no longer used to describe the world, any country, or any individual. And Ikeda took these words from his mentor very seriously. So, multiple types of miseries affecting hundreds of millions of people here and now today. Poverty, hunger, no safe water for hundreds of millions of people, no sanitation, environmental destruction, climate change. And Ikeda made many very concrete proposals. For example, there's so many, but we're just going to read the top one. In 2006, there were many types of miseries, and the top proposal in green. There were food crises that started in 2006 due to speculation in biofuels. So Ikeda took an idea he had already in 1974, before the peace proposals that he had already proposed. He put it in his 2009 peace proposal, which is the idea of a World Food Bank. So that means in strategic locations all over the world, you'll have reserves of grain. So that if there is a famine, instead of dying, people can use that for a while and survive, and then until the problem is fixed. So that would really alleviate the situation. There's so many, so let's just move on. By the environment and energy, the background, the Decade of Education for Sustainable Development was adopted by the General Assembly in 2002, started in 2005, we are still in it. So as soon as the idea came up, Ikeda showed tremendous support for that in his peace proposals. And recently, the Millennium Development Goals that were decided upon in 2000 are until 2015, so they're going to expire. So now the new ones are going to be called Sustainable Development Goals. So as soon as Ikeda heard that, he really supported this idea and made sure as many people as possible know. Well, he has a grassroots organization of 12 million people, so when he sends the peace proposals out, it's a lot of people who can learn about the UN in a direct way. Another type of misery, of course, human rights abuses, racism, discrimination, and the fact that lots of the things we do to each other are based on the idea that it's okay to have war and violence as our culture. So here is a quote, I think, which is really crucial about how we can support human rights and we can support people who are victims of human rights in our daily lives. Quote, "It is only when the norms of human rights are elevated to a personal vow that they become a source of inexhaustible energy for social transformation." So human rights, you know, there are rules, there are laws, they are in books or they are on computers somewhere over there, maybe in the UN building somewhere. So if most people think like that, of course, there's no reason to really support human rights. It's something that others have to do. But if you believe, oh wow, human rights are mine, I own them, and I first want to apply them in my own life. I want to treat myself as a full human being, as it says in, you know, all the Declaration of Human Rights. I want to treat my partner, my parents, my brothers, sisters, friends, colleagues. I make a personal vow to live human rights and to support them. Well, if 7 billion of us can do that, I think human rights have more chances of being implemented, and the UN is going to have an easier time to get things done based on human rights. So, and that's great because there's something we can all do here and now. It doesn't cost anything. It's just a few neural networks being activated, yes, and maybe in the heart and the body. I make a vow. No. And of course, at the same time, not only this kind of spiritual awakening aspect, but very, very technical aspects about human rights. But I think I'm speaking really too much. So just believe me, there's lots of proposals in this book, and this is one of them. Okay. We finished 2 chapters, chapter 3. All right, on our way. Ikeda, of course, is very concerned about that very organized form of violence and killing, which is war. And he made many proposals, a universal declaration renouncing war in '84, grassroots education for disarmament, meaning in all junior high schools and high school there would be courses on disarmament all over the world, before math. He didn't say before math, but. And the abolition of nuclear weapons come back in each proposal since '83. There is no exception. So that is definitely a major theme. So again, inspired as a young man, inspired by his mentor, who said in 1957, Toda said, quote, "I want to expose and rip out the claws that lie hidden in the very depth of such weapons." And it's really a problem, because even if we get rid, and we should, but even if we get rid of all nuclear weapons, all of them, all 25,632 nuclear weapons in the world, all of them, how much time is it going to take for a country to rebuild them? I mean, it's difficult to evaluate, but I heard a number, which I want to repeat here. So I didn't check, but I heard it from an expert. How much time will it take for Japan to build a nuclear weapon? They start now, and in a certain time, they'll be ready to deliver it to a target. How much time do you think is going to take them?
Less than a
2
year.
years?
What I heard is 3 weeks. They are ready. Many, many countries are ready. They just don't do it, but so we are in much more trouble than we think. But there are solutions, yes. So those are the claws. It's not just the nuclear weapons themselves. Of course, we have to get rid of them first, but at the same time, in addition, we need to change the mentality that makes us believe that we really need them, that the only way to live together is to threaten each other with annihilation. That's why you're in this room. You're so afraid of me. You came here. And that's why I came. I'm so afraid of him. That's not the best way to live together, is it? So why do we do it on the international level with billions of dollars to maintain those weapons? I mean, it's like, we can do better than this. Okay. So now, Ikeda himself comments on this passage with the clause. He says, "My understanding of my mentor's declaration is that the hidden clause underlying nuclear weapons represent any conception of security predicated on the suffering and sacrifice of ordinary citizens." So I've heard many times Ikeda mention on the personal level, it's a catchphrase, and I believe it's so true, because, quote, "You cannot build your happiness on the misery of another person," unquote. It's not about getting caught or not. That's not the point. It's about, when you hurt somebody for your own advantage. And does it really feel good, honestly? So you cannot build your own happiness on the misery of somebody else, on the personal level. So now Ikeda brings that to the international level. And he says, not an exact quote, but he says something to the effect that you cannot build genuine national security on the terror and misery of other countries. That's why we should get rid of them and of the clause and everything else. So again, more technically, many, many concrete proposals. I just want to show here with those different colors that Ikeda is really studying the world situation in detail every day, all the time. And when he writes a proposal, it's really based on what's going on today and yesterday. So for example, something that's quoted often is the 1996 International Court of Justice advisory opinion that if you look at it from a certain angle, nuclear weapons are illegal. To have them, to build them, and to threaten people with them is illegal. So some countries use that to propose a resolution in '96. And in '97, civil society made a draft. Ikeda supported that 2 years later in '99. And then it kind of went behind the scenes. But then in 2007, there was a revised draft. There was an attempt to create a consensus around a nuclear weapons convention. And Ikeda then supported this every single year. 2009, 10, 11, 13, and in the last one too. The last peace proposal is not in the book, but it's downloadable for free. So it's a very good idea to use them in combination. You know, 2014 peace proposal, the cherry and the pie, you know, put them together, because it becomes clear actually this year's proposal if you can dig in a little bit in this one. So tremendous support for this idea of a nuclear weapons convention, which recently has shifted even better. It's about agreeing on the humanitarian impact on nuclear weapons, which we can really all do. Oh, we finished 3 chapters. Last chapter, number 4. Okay, I'm going to give you a treat. The entire 4th chapter is in this slide. Just the titles. Because we felt when we reread the 2012 and 2013 peace proposals that they create a chapter just by themselves with the coherent theme of empowerment for future change. So I'd like simply to highlight the difference between the black and the blue, that I think it's very much in line with Ikeda's philosophy of respect for the dignity of life and trust in people and conviction that every single human being has this potential for more courage, more wisdom, more compassion, and that if we get together based on that, we can accomplish anything. So you start with the blue inside of your heart, like the vow for human rights. You start with a personal reverence for the dignity of life. And then together we can accomplish huge tasks like human security, sustainability on the global level. Same thing with 2013 peace proposal, by developing our own compassion, wisdom, and courage, and then getting together, we can build a global solidarity of peace and creative coexistence globally. And now, the conclusion. So after the book was finally edited and printed out, then I could read it, finally. So I read the book as if I didn't edit it, like some other book. And it's very hard because so many horrible problems in the world affecting hundreds of millions of people and affecting us. You know, you think maybe there's not a single particle of cesium from Fukushima that's going to get in my plate. How do I know? So, you know, the world has become very small and everything is interconnected. So, wow, so many huge problems and then very technical solutions. However, when I finished the book, I felt a tremendous sense of hope underlying the whole book. And I felt, wow, if we just have creativity and then we hook up with others and we have solidarity, wow, with creativity and solidarity, there is nothing that human beings cannot accomplish. That's what I felt. I felt engagement with the world. I felt I want to do something for the UN. So basically, my question, what I'm seeking after reading this book, and I'm the only one in the world who has to read the whole book, okay? we spent 3 weeks on the index. We have a fantastic table of contents that's like 5-6 pages long. So whatever you are interested in, just go right there. And then you'll find, you know, maybe 10 pages that address everything that you really care about. And that's it, that's good enough. So, you know, that's why the book is designed for that. You can zoom in what you really like. So the question I was left with is, what can we do here and now to ensure that the UN fully functions as... Any volunteers, any ideas? What would you like the UN to function like? A family, or a family, unity,
peace.
Peace. Yes, good listener, as a good listener, yes. 2 more. As a catalyst for world peace, as a leader for world peace. Happiness. The or a? A little bit of a culture of peace. A culture of peace, the culture of peace. Very good. Wow, fantastic. So I'll give you mine. Here we go. What can we do here and now to ensure that the UN fully functions as a forum for peace? Thank you very much.